You are a cultural pioneer, or as I'd like to say, a culture-neer. You're daring to go where others aren't willing to go. The unknown doesn't scare you, it intrigues you. You're not satisfied with the status quo. Business as usual is not in your DNA. You're done with doing the same thing and expecting a different result. You're an explorer at heart and a trendsetter by nature. You were born with purpose, called to lead, destined to make a difference. You are a culture-neer. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Culture-neer podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney. Listen, today's going to be a little bit different. I want to share with you an excerpt from a conference that we just did called The Ripple Effect. And the subject matter that we talked about was on perspective. I just think there's a lot that can be taken away from this. I'm going to break this up in a couple of parts today. And I want you to be listening for, there's really only one thing that has the most dramatic impact to change the outcome of all of the challenges and situations that you're dealing with. And it's you. It's your perspective. Because our perspective, how we view things, really does drive how we do things. So I hope you enjoy as you listen in at our conference, the Ripple Effect Experience from 2025. And I'll come back at the end and we'll unpack this just a little bit. Hope you enjoy. I would say based on the experience comment, I'm qualified to speak today. Lots of mistakes. And guys, that really is what this is about. You've got some people that are going to speak today that are just going to share not just the highlight reel of their success stories, but also some things that they've learned, things that they struggled with. And I think, if they're willing to be vulnerable and share some of the things they didn't do right, in order to be able to help you not have to make some of the same mistakes, then I would just challenge you, take some notes and then execute on that. Many times I think when we come together at events like this, we can get inspired. We can get filled with hope about our situation changing, but hope is not a strategy. And inspiration doesn't last very long. It's in the execution that really brings about long-term change. And that's really what this is about today. So I'm going to try to set the stage a little bit this morning on what we're going to talk about, because everything is going to be around culture today. If you look through the book, you see some of the topics, obviously, that we're going to be going over. Those were designed because as we fielded a lot of surveying, what we found out is those are the challenges that generally most of us in this room face in one way or the other. And so if you're here today as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, mid-level manager, aspiring leader, you may hear talk that sounds like it's coming a little bit more at the owner of the organization or the business, but I promise you, this is for everybody in the room. If you're here, that speaks something about who you are and who you want to become. And I think it's good for us to keep in mind not just what we're trying to accomplish, but who we're becoming in the process. And the fact that you want to be here means that you're not satisfied with the status quo. There's something more, and that there's something more you can give, and there's something more that you can become. So our goal is at the end of the day to help you with some of the most common challenges that are faced in the workplace. We want to see you succeed. Because here's what I believe. When purpose-driven businesses are successful and led well, everyone wins. The employee wins, the customer wins, the vendor wins, even the community wins. And so it's in all of our best interest to kind of pass on some knowledge and try to be successful. It's rewarding, it's fulfilling, it's energizing when you feel like that you're out there really making a difference, whether that's in the lives of some of the people that are serving alongside of you in the trenches and whatever it is you do and whatever profession you have, or it's out in the community where you have an opportunity maybe to give back. There's something about, I think, understanding the theme of everything that we're talking about today is business beyond profit. It's almost like a question. You put a question mark behind that. Business beyond profit. Is there something more beyond just profit? And that would be one of the questions. So I want to challenge you just with a couple of things as we go through this, setting these other guys up, is challenge you to begin to think, because what I want to talk to you about is perspective. Because if you can have the proper perspective, you can look at the same situation, but yet see something differently. There's some people that only look at things, and then there's some people that actually see things. You know what I'm talking about? You ever had that epiphany where you're driving to work, and it's like, where'd that house come from? Well, the house has been there for 30 years. But you were in your routine, and you never seen the details of that house that it caught your attention, but you passed it every single day. And there's something about a leader when our perspective changes that we're able to see things that other people only look at. And when you have that, when you begin to develop that skill, it gives you a lot of influence, and it causes you to be very intentional about your interactions and the people that you're leading. And so the foundation of everything that we're going to talk about today is going to be based on culture and having that purpose that goes beyond profit. Why? Because it's foundational, I believe, for all of our long-term success. You see, I still believe with enough hard work, determination, and integrity, the American dream is still alive. Anybody else in this room believe that? And so small to medium businesses, guys, they're the backbone of the American economy. They're the ones producing jobs out there. There's something to be said about people that are willing to take a risk and risk their capital and go chasing and pursuing a dream. There's something about people that are willing to pass up bigger opportunities to join a smaller company because they bought into the vision of where that company could be, even though somebody else would pay them more if they went to work for them right now. See, those are risk takers. Those are people that are willing to go all in. Those are the kind of people that they refuse to lose. I love the story of the Spanish, I'm trying to think of exactly who his name was. He was a conqueror, but it's the old story of burn the ships. And when they pulled up onto the shore, he ordered all of his men to turn around and burn all the ships. Because it was Cortez. They knew that there was a fight that was going to be in front of them, and retreat was not going to be an option. So they burned all the ships. Like, now we're going to have to fight. We're going to have to win. And that's the attitude I think that makes our country great. That's the attitude that causes us in this room to be successful, because there's possibilities. But you have to see that. There has to be that perspective. And so, having said all that, the question today is, being profitable is so super important to everything we do. I mean, you have to have a good reputation. You need to be able to pay your vendors, your people, your bills, and all these different things. But I just want you to think, is there something more than just being profitable? I was sharing with somebody earlier this morning, and I just caught this on a podcast literally before I came in. And they were talking about how blood and oxygen are so necessary for the body. And having a proper, heart health and exercise and the regimen and all those different things, vitally important to be healthy. But then he went on and he said, but it's not really the purpose of the body. The purpose of the body is really, there's things that are more important than just that, like family, like faith, like, all these other things. In other words, your body being healthy causes you to be present to fulfill a greater purpose. You think about business sometimes, I think it's easy for us to get caught up on numbers and spreadsheets, and those are important, and profit is important, and margin is super important. But at the end of the day, there is a little bit more to it than that. What is the purpose of that? Like, who are we becoming also in the process of that? That's what I hope we walk away and we take away with today. So I love this quote by Jim Collins. They're going to throw it on the screen. And it's from his book, Good to Great, which is an old classic. But it says, true greatness comes in direct proportion to a passionate pursuit of purpose beyond money. Isn't that powerful? See, every business exists to make money. There's no exception. 100% of the businesses need to make money. But not every business has a purpose beyond making money for which they exist. So you need to ask yourself, do you? Are you just caught on the hamster wheel and the grind, and are you just making money just so you have security in your life? And those things are important. But is there something beyond that? Because if you can figure out what the beyond that is, you won't work another day in your life. I was having a conversation a while ago, and in this person's particular professional field, they were talking about, we're in seminars all the time about burnout. But she was saying she doesn't deal with burnout. Why? Because she feels like she's pursuing her purpose and she's passionate about it, and so it fuels what she's doing. That's the importance of tapping into some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. Purpose, just as important as profit. Mission, I think just as important as margin. Something interesting happened in the late part of the 70s. There was this shared sentiment about business prior to the 70s. Business and the people that work for them believed that they had a responsibility to use their time, their talents, and their treasures, not only to increase their personal financial portfolios, but also felt they had a responsibility to make the communities they lived in better. The question is what happened to that sentiment? Because we don't see that everywhere today. I think there's a resurgence in it, but it's not necessarily predominant everywhere you go. In my grandfather's generation, he served in World War II, the perspective for the employee in that era was very different. Many of them would go find what they felt like was going to be a lifelong career, and they would stay there their entire life. And they expected from that business, that they were going to invest in them, they were going to have job security, and they were going to work for a company that they were proud of that was involved probably in their community. And they stayed. Now, you make that contrast with employees, many of the employees we have today, is there's a little bit different mindset. Now, again, I'm not stereotyping, but just a mindset perspective. I interview enough people to know when I'm interviewing somebody that's 31 and they've already had 9 jobs, it's a little bit different era than it was back in that You understand what I'm saying? We all know that's just reality. So what changed in that? Well, here's something I think is very interesting if you study just a little bit about history. Because there's a gentleman named Milton Friedman, and he was supposedly a brilliant economist. And what happened is in the late 70s, he redefined what the definition of business was. And this was his definition. He said the purpose of business was to maximize profit within the boundaries of the law. Think about that for a minute. The purpose of business. Didn't say anything about ethics, didn't say anything about people. The purpose, didn't say anything about problem solving. The purpose of business was to maximize profit within the boundaries of the law. And what happened is that mindset began to impact management styles for the next few decades. And it not only influenced management styles, but it also influenced the cynicism, I believe, that you see in many customers. It also began to influence the attitudes and the perspectives of employees because everything began to change. It began to be rewritten. Business was managed more by numbers and short-term results. Here's something that was so interesting. They say prior to the 80s, most of the time when you had a big downsizing in a company, it was because the company, they really didn't have an option if they were going to be able to stay in business. But it's very common after late 70s, early 80s, for corporations in particular, that have thousands of people, begin to look at like the profit margin wasn't what it needed to be for this quarter, so we're going to shave down our workforce a little bit to make the business more profitable. Guys, we're all in business. There's times you have to make tough decisions. Again, you have to be profitable. You have to have margin, and not just in the moment, but for long term. But there was a mind shift in how we viewed, I think, the communities that we served in. There was a mind shift in the people that work for us. And there was a mind shift again in how customers perceive that. And so the behaviors of the employees begin to change. It was no longer just about loyalty. It was more about money. Money was important in the beginning because money is important to the employee just like it is to a business owner. But what happened is many of our employees become more like mercenaries. Like, I'm up for bid for the highest offer. I know I said, that I was going to come and make this 2-year, 3-year commitment to you because you've seen something in me for management, But, 6 months after I was here, somebody come and offered me more money. And so loyalty, integrity, character, whatever my promise was kind of out the window because I was driven by the dollars. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, what would happen, though, if the perspective changed? Instead of hiring just mercenaries that worked in our company, that we really had missionaries. And what I mean by missionaries is people that are led by the mission. In other words, they're sold out to the mission that you have in your organization, because your mission begins to give you purpose for the people that are coming to work every day. See, back in my grandfather's era, they were concerned about working for a company that had a good reputation, that put out a good product. They wanted to be associated with that. They also wanted to be associated with a company that they felt like, for the longevity, was going to be able to provide them and their family a paycheck, just like for every one of our dreams in our generation was that we would make it just a little bit better in our generation than what they had it in the previous generation. It's just part of it. I think what began to happen is now, when you're interviewing, you're talking to so many people, paychecks are important, but if you look at survey after survey, what you're going to pay me is not the most important thing if I'm choosing to join your company. It's important, but it doesn't even make the most important. So the average employee today, what they're looking for is, I want to know that I can go to a place and be a part of something that's bigger than myself. In other words, I want to have purpose in whatever I do. If I'm going to trade my time, which represents my life, I want to make sure it's worth it. And my life is worth more than just measuring out on what you're going to pay me per hour. So they need to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And the second most prominent thing that they're looking for is, I want to know that if I'm here, there's going to be opportunity for growth and you're going to help develop me. So how are you going to invest in me? In other words, this generation has realized that potential is not just what you are, it's what you can become. So I want to work for and with someone that sees in me what I know is buried in there and can call that out of me. And so if you can begin to change the perspective now of how I hire people, the people that are working for me, where I'm investing my budget, employee development, giving back in the community, all these different things, the perspective begins to change. Because what happened in the late 70s is it really influenced almost all the management books that we read. And so, again, I think we got to have a reset and come back to our businesses. We can't just use our people to grow the business. We need to use the business to grow our people. And in the process of that, our businesses are just going to grow. So what I'm talking about is perspective change. Again, these things sound very similar, but they're vastly different as we talk about them. Does that make sense this morning? So I'm going to give you one of the most powerful tools of transforming your organization and making it more successful. Because the secret weapon of success really starts with you, because it is the power of perspective. Your perception of a situation greatly influences how it's going to unfold. Like, what are you expecting to happen? It's amazing that what we look for is typically what we find. If you wake up today when your feet hit the floor, you're expecting this is just going to be a horrible day. I've already overslept 15 minutes. I can't even find my other sock. I can't believe I didn't gas up the car. I'm already late for this appointment. I didn't charge my phone. Your expectations for the day, if you're not careful, will be to self-prophesy that that's exactly how the rest of my day is going to go. And isn't it amazing when you kind of expect those kind of things, that's kind of how things go. But yet, if your perspective is you can go through all of those same scenarios, none of that changes. But your perspective and your outlook changes. I'm not looking now just for obstacles. That's why when you talk to people that tend to be more negative and pessimistic, they can be presented with the same opportunity, but they want to talk to you about all the things that could go wrong. But have you considered all these obstacles? Do you understand if this went bad, how bad it would be? Do you know how much this could cost us? But then you take the perspective that they're an optimist. It's like, do you see how much we could make, though, if this works? Do you understand that those obstacles, man, those are just learning moments for us. They're stepping stones to something greater. They're looking at the exact same thing. But the perspective of how they're viewing that is totally different. So again, I hope this morning, just for a minute, change some of your preconceived notions, change your perspective just a little bit. If you'll open yourself up just for the next few hours for entertaining the idea of a different perspective, of looking at something you came in here looking at, but just look at it differently through somebody else's glasses, maybe you'll walk away seeing something that you've only been looking at. Maybe you'll walk away with a tool that you'll actually be able to use because, man, it's that one little thing that changes the trajectory of everything. And so I want to give you an example of this. In the late 90s, we participated in there were some big floods around here. There was a lot of them through Gallatin County, and we were involved in some of the relief efforts. So we've seen some of this stuff, up close and personal. There's lots of people that were just giving of their time and going and filling sandbags and providing meals and helping families move and all these different things. Now you think about if you had a flood today, and in our society, everybody's not prone to manual labor. And so you throw up an advertisement, $15 an hour, and we're going to recruit people to fill sandbags. It's a temporary job. The conditions are going to be hot. You need to be able to, can you throw that up? You're going to need to be able to lift at least 50 pounds. And you go through this whole dynamic. There wouldn't be a lot of people that would probably be signing up and applying for that job for all the obvious reasons. But yet, what would happen if you threw the same ad up? You're going to pay the exact same rate, but the ad was slightly different. We need heroes and people that are willing to come help the historic town of Shawneetown, Illinois. Would you come? We're going to be paying $15 an hour, but we need people that will come and help us save historic churches and homes and businesses. Would you come be a part of helping The exact same job, the exact same pay, but a slightly different perspective of who would want to be involved in it. Does that make sense? And so that perspective change really has to come in everything that we do, in telling our story, because that's how you assemble a group of missionaries. They're bought into the mission of what you're doing. Listen, guys, I can tell you this works. Our primary business is a roofing company. Not the most appealing thing that people want to do. It's probably right up there with a used car salesman and an attorney. No offense if any of you are in the room. They just kind of lump us all together. The expectations are pretty low as far as how they expect to be treated, the level of professionalism, and specifically the level of integrity that they're going to be dealt with or they're going to come in contact with. But I can promise you, if you could set out a mission, the guys that come and the ladies that come to work at our place every day understand and can tell you what the mission statement is. Because they wake up every day to see how they can protect what matters most. They understand that it's more than putting a roof on somebody's house. So the perspective change is, listen, we've been called out with people that have an anxiety. Nobody woke up today wanting to spend $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 on a roof. They'd rather go to Disney World. They'd rather go on a dream vacation. They'd rather pay off their credit card, put that towards tuition for college. Anything but that. And so the fact that they're having to spend that money is because there's a problem or a fear of a problem that's about to happen. So there's anxiety. We get to go out and solve problems today, relieve anxiety, and in the process provide an amazing customer experience. Oh, by the way, when you go out there, I want you to remember it's more than a roof. You're going out there and they're asking us to go out there and help them protect what matters most to them, because what matters most to them lives underneath that roof in that house. And in the attic are heirlooms from previous generations that are priceless. And on the walls are pictures of the people that mean the most to them, and snapshots and memories of life that can never be replaced. That's what we get to go out there and help them save today. And so when they have that kind of approach, they're not thinking about going out and being a roofing salesman or being an installer or being quality control. They're thinking about the mission that they're on of helping people. See, when this mind shift and the perspective, I think, began to change, and I was saying a while ago, it drifted down to our perspective as employees changed. Our customers' perspective changed too. They no longer looked, I think, at salespeople as someone that was a problem solver, as someone that was going to be a consultant and give them options to solve their problems. They looked at sales not as something that somebody's going to do for me, but it's something that people are going to do to me. Much different expectation. Not for me, but to me. See, most people don't want to be sold, but most people love to buy. I mean, it's just the reality. And so that perspective change and that mission begins to drive everything. Does that make sense this morning? So many businesses use people to grow their business. What if you used your business to grow your people? What if you turned and invested in them? Because I can promise you, organizations with great culture and long-term thinking, this is how they think. You know, it's not just an expense, it's an investment. Again, it's a mind shift. It's a change. If we're going to expect our people to grow our business, then doesn't it make sense that we should use our business to grow our people? So think about how you can do that. I mean, some of these things can be as simple as providing reading plans for some of the people at work, suggesting podcasts or buying, Audible memberships, sending them to an event like this. When you think about it, we tell people all the time because we're avid readers. I believe leaders are readers. But man, if I can go spend $25 on somebody's book and it takes me 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever to read that, but it's 25 years of their life and mistakes that took them to learn that content, and then they're willing to share that, that's a pretty good investment on my part. 4 hours, 25 years. So what if you expose just your people to that? What if you invested in them? It's funny when we're interviewing people, one of our interview questions is, tell me about the last personal development book you read. It used to be what book you read. Well, see, I graduated in... So then we got a little bit more specific, like personal development. But what we found is that when somebody sees something in them and believes in that potential and then causes them to see that as a tool, they suddenly get excited. Now, many of them are going to listen to it, not read it, but that's one of the great opportunities that we have today. I mean, there's really no excuse for not growing unless you just don't want to. But what are you doing to invest, in your team? Guys, this is all tied together as we're going forward. So I want to challenge you. What if you change your perspective and I said, focus on creating raving fans? So probably the first thing we would all think about is, how do I create more customers that just love us and want to tell everybody about us? But creating raving fans starts with creating raving employees first. Now that's a perspective change. I bet all of us in here have some kind of budget expense that we have allotted towards marketing and advertising. But do we have a budget and do we have money earmarked towards our own team and investing in them? What are we doing to create raving employees? So here's the deal, guys. Your employees are the lid on the customer experience your organization is facing right now. You ever went to those restaurants where the food was great and you always want to go back, and then they had the same cook, the building was exactly the same, they set the table the same way, but it started with the hostess who couldn't get off her phone. And then when told you it was going to be a 45-minute wait, and you were not confident that she was competent in her job, and so every 10 minutes you were at, where am I at on the list? Where am I at on the list? Her attitude got worse. She acted like you were an inconvenience. So your experience, even though the food was great and the building was the same, was not the same. You did not leave as a raving fan. If people ask you the next morning, what'd you do last night? You were probably quick to tell them about your bad experience at your favorite restaurant. On how it's usually never that way. I mean, it takes a lot of money to overcome that kind of bad advertisement. When really what you ran into is smack dab into the culture of that organization, because there was an employee that felt like they just had a job and it really didn't matter. You ran into someone that felt like they were just a number and they were expendable. What you ran into was someone that was just a mercenary that viewed they were there temporary. You didn't run into someone that had been coached before they showed up. Listen, when people come to our restaurant tonight, we're one of the most expensive restaurants in our town, and they don't come here just because we have great food. And we have great food. And they don't come here just because our building looks the coolest and it's the cleanest, because we really think it is. They come here because they're creating a memory. They're bringing grandma on her 97th birthday. They're bringing in their son that was their miracle baby they told that they would never have. Maybe they're bringing tonight in their dad who's been given 6 months left to live, and they've got all the family together tonight. And so your job, when we go out there, when we turn the lights on and we open the door tonight, I want you to think about the stories of all the people that are going to come into this place tonight, because we have an opportunity to facilitate an environment where a memory can take place. And that's what we get to do tonight. And maybe in their busy world, filled with stress, anxiety, and bad news, we can be a bright spot in the road tonight. Now, that person is probably not going to be on their phone when you walk up to the hostess station. That person, getting paid the exact same thing, doing the exact same job, has a different perspective because they understand the mission. They have purpose in what they're doing that goes beyond a paycheck. Listen, if we're only united in our organizations with a paycheck, it's never going to feel like family. You're never going to hear people talk about camaraderie. It's not going to be a great culture. It's going to be ordinary. Do you want an ordinary organization? Do you want an ordinary business? Do you want an ordinary customer experience? Do you want ordinary profits? No, you want extraordinary. And so you have to change and have a different perspective and begin to provide some of this purpose for some of the people that are working for you. All right, guys, welcome back. I hope you had some nuggets that you could take away from that. Listen, I want to encourage you to listen to this maybe a couple of times and then write down some of the things maybe that you pulled out of that. My challenge would be over the next 2 weeks, try to implement some of these new things, these new habits that we talked about today. The next time we're together, I'm going to hit part 2 of this, and you can kind of take this a little bit deeper. But you know what I found is it's not so much the information that we know, it's more about what we do with that information. So the real success that brings about change in our life is all about the execution. So you've gathered the information. Hopefully you've taken away a little bit of inspiration. But now go do the work. It's the execution that will make the difference and that will pay big dividends. Listen, we'll see you next time on the Culture-neer podcast.